Hello, everyone. If we could all take your seats again, I'd like to open the afternoon session. And this is a really lovely session because it's the future of research in ageing and population, demographics, work and health. One of CEPAR's main goals, apart from producing excellent research and dialogue cards and report cards, has been to develop the next generation of researchers. And in that period that we've been existing, Generation 2, which is when I joined in 2017, we've had a lot of programs that were aimed at developing our PhD and ECR scholars, at developing our mid-career scholars, and at identifying and developing our future leaders. Sharon and I started that total program 7 years ago. Then Sharon handed it over to me about halfway through, and we focused then on developing the group that had now matured quite a bit, and we're doing excellent work, and also making sure that our mentoring program worked very well. I want to thank at this point, and although she's not here, one of our PhD students at the time was Lisa Gulasarian, and she had come from industry in a training and leadership role and helped us in CEPAR to develop what I think was a really well-organised mentoring program. And with the help of Amy and Colleen and Anne and Silke, we rolled that out over the years. And I know lots of people really benefited from that program. So this afternoon's a chance to also thank all the mentors in CEPAR for the work that they did with our mentees, and to also see the development that has occurred amongst all our colleagues who came and have risen through the ranks from, as I said, PhD students, honours students. We've had honours programs as well, summer scholarships. So there's been a lot of developmental activities going on over the past 7 years. And it's always been a delight at our annual workshops to have those people come together and let them meet each other, talk about their challenges and their problems, but also to celebrate their successes. And this afternoon we're going to hear from some of them, and I'm really delighted that we can, we do have time to hear their programs of research and what they're doing next. And the first person we have is Craig Sinclair, who is at the School of Psychology at UNSW and has been at CEPAR but doing other things. He's making a presentation on supported decision-making for diverse older adults in the 21st century. And Craig, along with everyone in this session, has 10 minutes to present, and I've been instructed to keep everyone to time. I'll sit down there and I'll flick my hands up when there's 2 minutes to go, and you can wrap up then. But we do have 5 minutes for questions after each person. So please take your notepads out, use the last half of the afternoon to think hard about future research directions and to ask our next generation of scholars some tricky questions, some thought-provoking questions, and help us make this a really stimulating session. So Craig, thank you. You're up first.
Thank you, Marian, and hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be back with you. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of the work that I've been fortunate to be able to do as involved with the CEPAR program, and also some, I guess, future directions around the work that I'm hoping to do. And for myself, I guess part of the brief of this is talking a bit about where we came from and where we think we might be going in future. My entry to CEPAR was after about 10 years of working in clinical end-of-life care settings in small regional communities. And one thing that's very often said in those settings is that if you've been in one remote or regional community and done research there, you've been in one remote or regional community. It's not easy to just transplant findings into very different geographically or culturally different places. And on the other hand, when we think about service system design, I think one of the things that I was really fortunate to learn through CEPAR and through access to larger longitudinal data sets and is to be able to take that bigger picture population approach as well. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And I would like to thank Karen and the wonderful dynamic team that I was part of there, as well as the Future Leaders program and that mentorship opportunity. Click, yep. So what I'm going to be talking about is some of the work from Stream 2 around decision making. And as was mentioned earlier today, we did use the Path Through Life longitudinal cohort dataset and tried to understand a bit about the types of decision makers and then how the ageing process was influencing their decision making. And from this perspective, executive function abilities were associated with decision-making task performance, and poorer executive function abilities could be seen to be associated with lower performance on those laboratory-controlled decision-making tasks. And when we looked at people for whom ageing was not unfolding in the normative process, but instead there was a mild cognitive impairment, those who had multiple domains of cognitive impairment were more impacted than those with single domain impairment. And so from the cognitive science point of view and thinking about utility and decision making, there's things here that we can learn from. But as I wrote in the abstract that I put in for this talk, there's also, these factors are overlaid with a range of other complexities for older adults who are aging in the context of resource constraints, changing social networks, less or more access to assistance and support. And so some other work that's been going on with that PATH data set has included trying to understand the factors that make older adults more susceptible to fraud. And in this case, we found that other non-cognitive factors and psychological influences like depression and mastery are also involved in that process. And we also see that older adults from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and our ageing population is becoming more culturally diverse, are less likely to express their own wishes for future healthcare and also experience additional barriers in navigating care services. And so this comes from some work that was undertaken by Yuchen Shi, who undertook a PhD through the CEPAR program as well. That broadens our perspective on decision making, perhaps, that it's not always just about the utility of what decision we make, but thinking, especially in the context of values-based decisions, as to who and how who makes those decisions and how they are made. And there's a lot of policy activity at the moment around the idea of who's involved in decision making for older adults, and this idea of supported decision making, which comes from a very different place. And it's not so much about the research evidence driving this change, but instead the normative process of human rights advocacy and law reform that's coming from the international level. And as I'll try to outline later on, we actually have very little evidence as to how to do this well. But the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that Australia's signed up to is now requiring that we formulate laws in Australia that enable people with disabilities to be recognised before the law, have legal capacity on an equal basis with others, and the one that gets the ethicists and lawyers really in a frenzy is this positive right to access support. So there's resource implications for this as well. And what does this mean when we look at it from a population ageing perspective? Well, when we look at some of the settings in which decision-making roles are actually appointed for older adults who have age-related cognitive impairment, we can now see that at court and tribunal levels, the substitute decision-making appointments, which were once mainly allocated for people with profound intellectual disabilities, the volume of those appointments is now heavily towards people with dementia and other age-related cognitive impairments. So this is one outcome for people as they age and have those more advanced stages of dementia, is that courts and tribunals can actually become involved in their lives and be appointing decision makers to make decisions about their money and also about their health and lifestyle. We were able to look at this in one of the recent waves of the Path Through Life cohort study, understanding that not just the experience of having your own decision-making impacted could be relevant, but also the role of having to make those substitute decisions for others could be quite an important experience and potentially a stressful one. We found that there was a 5-year prevalence of 11% among the midlife cohort for being involved in having to make financial decisions for somebody else. And as you might expect, for those in the midlife stage who are shown in the blue bars there, the vast majority of that substitute decision making happens for parents, while for those in the late life cohort, in the orange there, the majority of those contexts is making decisions for spousal partners. And importantly, 20 to 30% of those substitute decision makers are acting informally, so not with a court appointment or not with any formal guidance in their role. We find that people in that substitute decision-making role have higher role strain, and 36% of them experience stress or conflict in the role. So this is something that what is sometimes known as the sandwich generation, those who are midlife with aging parents and also managing children who are moving into adolescence or adulthood, are experiencing stress at this time of their lives around that substitute decision-making role. Which takes us to what can we do next? And I've been very fortunate to be able to work on this NHMRC-funded project, which is about trying to find ways that are strength-based to assist older adults ahead of time to plan for these future events and to understand more about them so that these very values-laden decisions can be made with some assistance. But in order to do that, we need to know what's important to these older adults. And so in this trial that we call the early trial, we've been using life story work across 4 sessions with the idea that that starts where the person is really expert. One thing that might be complex is your finances or complex medical decisions, but if we can start around the thing that a person is absolutely expert in and authority on, that's a place where they're confident to talk. And the reminiscence process can enhance mood and coping, while hopefully improving relationship quality and self-advocacy abilities. We also follow that on with an advanced care planning process, which is a way of facilitating older adults in talking about what would be the priorities for them in future if there was a time when they were unable to make their own decisions. And that uses a number of tools that have been developed, but really what this intervention is about is trying to bring all of those things together into a package that can be trained for staff and then delivered at a scalable level. And we think of it as something like a scaffold for a building. So it's scaffolding these complex decisions even while a person may be having an evolving cognitive impairment. At the moment, we have close to 90 older adults recruited across Sydney and Perth, and we have been working with home care package providers. It's been very slow going and hard work with them, but we thank them for their efforts. We've also opened up to try to increase those numbers, a community arm to that trial as well. So if you are interested, or if you know, if you have a relative or friend who might be interested in this study, that QR code will take you to some information about it. Where does this go for the future? Well, we do have that requirement around implementing supported decision making, and those recommendations have come down in previous Royal Commissions, but it's only 3 years later now after the Aged Care Royal Commission where we're actually seeing some action around the new Aged Care Act, which has committed that there will be rules on supported decision making to ensure older people have choice and control. But the next few months is going to be really critical on that. So the public policy challenge is that we've got this new practice coming in that's potentially transformative but with a thin evidence base. There's challenges in legislating it between the Commonwealth and state levels because health decision making is legislated at a state level while things like the Aged Care Act are Commonwealth. Regulating practice in this way in people's private lives is difficult. and training the aged care workforce in this new practice while resourcing it in ongoing practice. So we need to achieve consensus around what good supported decision-making looks like, validate ways of assessing it, and then build evidence on training and sustainable implementation. And importantly, have that work led or co-led by people with cognitive disabilities. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of the CEPAR work program, and happy to take questions.
Is there another mic? Yeah, I'll just give you this.
Thanks, Maddie. Such an interesting area of study, Craig. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I do have one because I've been recently, in the last 12 months, been confronted with that aged care. What's that plan called you're supposed to know about as you're dying?
The advanced care plan.
The advanced care plan. And I just wanted to ask you if, that, for those who don't know, this is a plan that older people often get when they, excuse me, when they move into an aged care facility and then have to put their options for how they want to be cared for, and if should things go wrong, how they'd like to be treated. And I found that almost impossible to show to my mother. It's sort of too late in the process, I feel, and I wonder if your study is looking at that, if we can get that sort of planning out prior to people being so sick or at that stage of life.
Yeah, absolutely. For years now, palliative care services and aged care services have been saying we're at the crisis end of this process, and so many things that are bound up in people's values and their family relationships and how they've made financial decisions sort of come together at that time. And if you think about cognitive impairment in that mix as well, it's a very stressful time to be trying to make those decisions. So really the rationale for our approach is that if you can reach people earlier in that process, then all the better. Unfortunately, when you do, it's not a very pleasant topic to think about, and a lot of people will say, well, I can deal with that later. So that's really why we want that strengths-based and hopefully enjoyable approach through the life story work.
Thank you. Any other questions now that we've opened up that quite depressing topic? It sort of strikes me as it should almost be in the retirement planning phase of your life as well, so you can think ahead. Well, look, thanks for that, and it's been wonderful to see your career develop, Craig, and the wonderful contributions that you're making. Thank you. Our next speaker is another person who's really well known to CEPAR and has also been a bit of a star throughout the journey. Katja Hanewald is going to talk about the role of home equity release in retirement behavioural factors, aged care and intergenerational aspects. Thank you, Katja.
Yes. So it's such a pleasure to be here because CEPAR has been such a big part of my career and my journey. I came in 2011 to work with Mike Sherris and on retirement issues. I worked with John Piggott and Han Ming-Fang on aging in China for 3.5 years. Recently started work, for 4 years now, worked with John Baird on healthy aging, and we got a paper in Nature Aging, which was accepted on Friday. But today I want to talk to you about the research I'm doing with Hazel Bateman on equity release. And I want to share this with you. If I could get my slides, please. Oh, sorry, yes. Because there is a real world motivation for this. It's the big question of how do we fund the retirement for a growing older population. So we're living longer lives. People are not ready to work much longer. They're looking towards enjoying a longer retirement. How can we fund this? And we, in our school, in the business school in CEPAR, we read policy documents, and the Retirement Income Review pointed out that for most Australians over 65, the home is their largest asset. The green bars bars in the first chart show you how much of housing wealth is held in the home. And the retirement income review said if households used a small portion of this large wealth, the main form for many households of their retirement savings, they could substantially improve retirement incomes, would have a modest impact on debt. This is a really attractive way to look at retirement funding because it doesn't require contributions from the working age. It's wealth that's already in the family. So our research over the past few years, so I will mostly comment on work in progress. We have had publications, but I want to share with you the new stuff and what's upcoming. So we have been asking questions such as, how can releasing equity help retirees in Australia? What option is good for them? And how do factors such as bequest motives, age care risk, and behavioral factors impact demand? A lot of this research is joined with Hazel. We have had 5 PhD students together. We have a lot of joint projects. It's been a joy to work with Hazel and our PhD students and postdocs. Tin Long Ho, Shel Wang, Han Lin, they are here today. These 2 postdocs, Katie and Scott, were honor students and are now in industry and the RBA. So we use life cycle framework simulation studies, one to assess the home equity access scheme. This is a government scheme that allows older Australians to offer a property against a loan from the government, and they can use their home, they can use their pineapple farm, they can use any kind of real estate in Australia to obtain a regular loan from the Australian government or lump sum. And so what we did, we modeled this for different types of households, different representative types of Australian households, calibrated based on HILDA data to see whether different strategies of using the scheme could be beneficial. And we find that for many Australian households, they could have benefits of using the scheme, and often using the maximum available payment could be actually the best option for them. Mike Sherris and his team have also done research on this, looking at even the characteristics of the properties. So then we went on to look at some factors that are often cited as obstacles to take up of these products where retirees use the wealth in their home. And we often hear bequest motives. People don't want to use this because of bequest. But when you think about it, we're living longer and longer, and bequest happens later and later in life. It's very uncertain when you inherit something and how much you will inherit. A bequest is a really hard thing to plan and take into account in your own financial planning. So what if instead of waiting for that end of life wealth transfer, we use this wealth available at a younger age, at an interview transfer. So what we looked at, we developed a model to see if it's better to leave a bequest from your home at the end of life or give to your child when they are trying to buy a property, when they are young. So we modeled the decision of a retiring mom, she's 67, and her daughter, 36, and the mom has the choice to take out a reverse mortgage and give some of that money to her daughter to buy a property. And we modeled this for different households in Australia, different representative households with different wealth levels. And we find that indeed this kind of wealth transfer happening earlier in life than just at the end of life could benefit many families, especially if the mom cares about her daughter's well-being, if she's altruistic towards her daughter, which is, I think, reasonable to assume. So next we looked at long-term care. Often Hazel spoke about saving motives, precautionary saving motives. We know that retirees often hang on to wealth because they're worried about end-of-life expenditures. So what if they could use the housing wealth to buy aged care insurance? Our research, an online survey in China, suggests this could be something that's attractive to households. A final project I want to share with you is about behavioral factors. So why is it, if our modeling, our team, other teams, Mike Sherris' research shows that this is an attractive product, why is it that so few people take up this product? And using survey methods, we find that behavior factors play a role. There's mental accounting going on. People see the home as an asset that's not available potentially for income, but something not to touch. So we need to change the narrative around that the home is something. So if we want to create a market for this, if we want to increase the uptake, one takeaway is to change the narrative around the home being just a part of your assets that you can use safely, for example, through the Australian Home Equity Access Scheme to increase your retirement income. So where are we going with this? What's future research? So Australian pension plans, superannuation funds are asked to develop income strategies, retirement income strategies for their members. They're mostly focusing around the superannuation savings. I think there's still a lot of research required to develop retirement income strategies for Australian households that consider all sources of wealth, that take a holistic view on a household's portfolio and consider all available options. Next, we have been recently working on a model that Hazel and co-authors implemented successfully to life insurance and other financial products, a decision state model that understands, conceptualizes the decision to take up a product as a consumer journey, from actually having to be aware about the product and then being interested and then finally being capable. So too often in our models, we assume that a household or an individual just knows about a product and fully understands it and is at the point of making a decision. This point, but our preliminary research for annuities and other financial products says that many people are stuck up here. They are not even aware of this product. So I think there's a need for research to investigate how much people actually know and how we can make them move towards decision states where they're closer to making a decision. The point is not to make everybody take up a reverse mortgage, but to make them capable of making a decision, perhaps to never choose it or to choose it later. And then finally, I think it's high time that we spend more effort on understanding who are the people, what kind of equity release is happening in Australia. We have a lot of news report about this sector growing. We know that the government program is growing, but we know very little about the characteristics. So Hazel and I are in this epic battle to get individual and level administrative data on one of the schemes. Been a journey, but we will not give up. We will get this data eventually, I'm pretty sure, because I think there's more to understand of who are these people and what are they doing to supplement and increase our modeling in this area and to provide individualized advice to and recommendations to households and policymakers. So thank you for being such a strong community, for all your work, for allowing me to be part of this. And I hope we will all connect and stay connected, or we will stay connected and meet again very soon.
Well, thank you, Katja. Katja also demonstrates, apart from her wonderful research capacity, fantastic training in delivering her presentation in exactly the right time, 10 minutes, thank you, which leaves us with 5 minutes for questions. And I feel there must be some terrific questions because this is such an interesting area of research and policy. And if I remember correctly, Lynn this morning said that reverse mortgage scheme of the government isn't taken up very often. I have to admit, I didn't even know about it. So this is a very valuable exercise already. So any comments or questions? Yes, Sharon, thank you.
Oh, hello. Yeah, thank you, Katja, for a really terrific presentation. I'm curious to know, who would you focus on trying to influence with this research? Because it seems incredibly important. And I was just reflecting, I go to a financial advisor and they don't say any of this stuff. Yeah. Would they be a logical group, or is it individuals? Who are the primary people you would want to communicate this to?
So I do it in different ways. So I'm part of an industry group that meets quarterly, consisting of reverse mortgage lenders and borrowers. And I'm the only academic of this industry forum hosted by the Finance Brokers Association of Australia. And they share their market trends, industry experience. They scrutinize new products and I comment on it. I attend their meetings. I do comment on the media. So a few weeks ago in The Guardian, I commented on Mike Sherris. We commented on one of the products that we think is very complex and potentially expensive. So we provide critical comment. Hazel and I participated in a consultation by DSS about the Home Equity Access Scheme, we were part of focus group inquiries, and I got a $120 voucher for towels from it, so it was really amazing. But our honor student who investigated the home equity access scheme presented her results to DSS. So I think it's a mix of, yes, and when we organize a lot of events and conferences, we have the annual colloquium on retirement and superannuation research coming up, and for these we often invite industry people to give presentations as well, and then also to talk to our researchers, and through these different ways, personal relationships, I think it's a mix. It takes time, but I think it's a mix of talking to, because I think what a lot of takeaway also from other CEPAR researchers, you can only explain something if it's not too complicated. So it's also influencing the providers to make their products not so complicated.
Thanks very much. Yes, Raf.
So one of the patterns that you see in mortgage repayments is that people that are older are repaying their mortgages later. It could be part of this general trend of everything being later. But I wonder whether some people are kind of knowingly not repaying their mortgages so that they're using more of their equity. It's not a reverse mortgage as such, but it's a kind of like a way for people to not pay off so that they're keeping some of that money and the bank will have more equity in the end. I wonder whether that's one kind of way of thinking about it.
So at these industry forums, the reverse mortgage brokers and lenders, they share their trends, and this is one of the biggest segments of reverse mortgage demand at the moment in Australia. People entering retirement with existing mortgage debt, not wanting to make the monthly payments and refinancing their mortgage into a reverse mortgage. So this is one of the biggest customer segments growing, where you say, scrap this, I don't want to make annual payment or my regular payments, I'm just changing this contract into a reverse mortgage. So this is actually happening, and it's especially like reverse mortgage rates in the private sector are at the moment between 9 and 10%, but it's still a growing sector because of the cost of living pressure. So people are more, some people are comfortable with having their debt accumulate, at least they don't have to make monthly payments. And against this background, the government scheme, which is just a 3.95%, 4%, is a really good, like the home equity access scheme, which is offered through the Department of Social Services, is a really good deal at just 4% interest rate for regular loans or lump sums.
Thank you, Katja. I think we'll have to leave it there because of timing, but fantastic research and impact. So our next presenter is another young man who came to CEPAR some years ago. I met him, and he's also developed rapidly, and I think is ready to mentor and lead a number of other people. So George Kudrna, who is going to talk about micro-founded macro models and their applications to public policy formation in developed and developing countries.
Thank you, Marian, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is George Kudrna. I'm a senior research fellow at CEPAR, and before getting into the heavy stuff about the micro-founded macro models, let me just briefly outline my involvement and contribution to CEPAR. Okay, so I started working at New South Wales University in 2008, August 2008. So I kind of completed my 16th year of full-time employment at CEPAR. Well, at New South Wales University. Prior to CEPAR, I was one of the first employees and fellows at Australian Institute of Population Aging Research that we heard about. So back then, John had to have established center to apply for the Center of Excellence, and since 2011, I was at CEPAR. At CEPAR 1, I was predominantly working with Alan Woodland. We have 10 plus joint economics publications and 3 to go to submit it. At CEPAR 2, I start more closely working with John Piggott and learn about EASI funding, particularly about linkages. And I should also acknowledge the emphasis of CEPAR 2 on the future leaders program and mentoring program that I was part of, and I was mentored by Warwick McKibben on engagement and Michael Keane on research publications. So key areas of interest and research here, macroeconomics, that in terms of the model that I work with, public economics, that in terms of applications to different issues of public economics, and more recently development economics, and mainly through the linkage ground that we had with World Bank and BPNAS working on Southeast Asia. And the expertise, so I built and code what here I called stochastic overlapping generation models. These are general equilibrium life cycle model. It's a specific type of macroeconomic model capturing life cycle behavior of heterogeneous households facing labor income and survival uncertainties, estimated with microeconomic data. There's also production, government, quite detailed government sector and equilibrium conditions. And we use these models to study reforms to or optimal public policy regarding a range of issues: income taxation, transfers, pensions, housing, education, and or migration. Just kind of highlights in this last year. So the key publication here, Alan already mentioned, is looking at the impact of pensions and or income taxes on home ownership. And we're using 3 different countries as example of different pension systems and income tax policies: Australia, Germany, and the US. And I should say, when I talk about pensions, as a macroeconomist, I talk about pension systems. So it's not just about pension benefits and recipients, but it's also about contributors to the pension system. So people who pay income taxes, who accumulate pay-as-you-go rights to claim future pensions, who through employment get superannuation contributions to access future pensions. This year, we had 4 research student completions, 1 in film, 2 PhD graduations, and 1 PhD student to go with the thesis defense in September 2024. And we collaborate with all these students on joint projects. In terms of the EASI linkage grants, that's kind of finishing this year, that employed 2 postdocs, 2 research assistants. There's about 11 papers, including 2 PhD dissertation. And we had great engagements with partners in the Southeast Asian region, and also more broadly in Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, but also South Korea and Japan. And I've been regularly engaging on the OLG model development and a range of policy issues with government departments and organizations, and most recently with the New Zealand government building their overlapping generation model. So let me talk a little bit about kind of this methodology that I've been working on and with for last 20 years, general equilibrium life cycle model. It's a macro model, so by that I mean that the model captures the most important macroeconomic equation, which is the national income identity, where output produced, or GDP, is equal to aggregate demand, what we consume, what the businesses spend, investment, government consumption, and the open economy models have net export. And what's special in these models is the life cycle behavior and decisions made over finite lives. So most macroeconomic models take into account infinitely live individuals. So that's kind of a difference here. Now, how that compares with other models? So the structural life cycle macro models. And similarly, the ology models includes intertupple choice based on kind of constraint optimization problem. We kind of often assume rational behaving individuals, but we can deviate from that assumption. And you may think of life cycle decision making regarding consumption, saving, labor supply, retirement, tenure, housing tenure choice, education, educational choice. And there are other micro-funded macro models, Hank models, heterogeneous agent, New Keynesian models. And similarly to these models, ology models include heterogeneous agents, heterogeneous households. They abstract from what's called kind of these New Keynesian rigidities. So in these models, we're dealing only with the real interest rate, so there's no relationship between nominal and real interest rate. But what the ology models does, they account for the decision making over the finite lives, and they kind of include details about the fiscal rules. So whereas the Hank models you can use for the monetary policy formation, here these models are used for the fiscal policy formation. An important part of these models is kind of the numerical solutions. And here kind of I'm not inventing anything new. There is kind of solution to get to derive kind of the macro variables and equilibrium prices. And then sort of the way how we solve for the household sector, we used dynamic programming. What make the solution much quicker these days is advancement in kind of parallel and cluster computing. That's kind of now allows us to solve very complex problems. So this is a bit small, but just kind of to show applications. So this, the aim of kind of this slide is to show that sort of, I collaborate with people. And I collaborate on projects that are multidisciplinary, but really the main focus is kind of on economics publications. And we have a number of working papers. They are at different stages of publications. So maybe just let me focus on the housing papers, just drawing on this publication that we managed this year in International Economic Review. So the first one here kind of looks at mortgage interest deduction, and there we kind of drawing on the Netherlands or the Dutch system, where people are allowed, homeowners with mortgage are allowed to deduct from the labor income tax base their mortgage interest. And if this is the case, what we observe from the data is that in Netherlands, people tend to have debt for over the life cycle rather than sort of try to repay. And the second project is in the Australian calibrated model, retirement financing with private pensions and housing assets. So in that model, we introduce superannuation. So we have three types of asset in this model to look at the impact of mandating superannuation and its interactions with housing in Australia. And I was kind of thinking about Marian's questions about whether we deal with women in some of these models. And so here are kind of two projects where we deal with women. So the First one, informality, gender heterogeneity, and pension reform in emerging Asia. So we kind of extended the framework that we did for Indonesia. So here we look at kind of the Vietnamese data and separately model males and females and different informality. Okay. In terms of the plans, I mean, for 2025 and research funding, so that was kind of the main thing, was on the Dean's Fellowship. So the objective was to apply for a linkage grant, and they kind of the extensions of the modeling and applications was to health, long-term care, migration, and environmental policy, sort of dealing with the design, how to fund it, and whether people would vote for it. Okay, so this other, okay. Okay. All right.
Oh, it's gone off. But I thank you, George, and music to my ears that you disaggregated the data by gender. Congratulations. Really good. Any questions for George? Yeah, thank you. Yes? Yeah, there's one coming. Thanks, George.
This would be a very quick one. Like, I mean, you mentioned that you're doing OLG modeling for many countries, and I wonder whether you kind of like, as a direction for future research, would you consider just having a global OLG model by just having all of them together, so you can think about the interaction, and that would kind of like relate to what Warwick presented this morning, to think about the impact of demographics in the global context. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for these questions. Typically kind of we focus on Australia, Australian policy, and then sort of, we move to kind of US type of policy, German type of policy, or even the models in order to kind of published in US-based and European journals. But having kind of everything in one model, it just kind of make these models very rigid, and just kind of thinking in terms of the publication strategy. For me, it's kind of now easier to recalibrate the model for the US. So we already, the policy is different. We know how to model it. We have the data to estimate labor productivity shocks, and and we have done that now for the US, for the Netherlands, for the Germany, and for Australia. Maybe, but yeah, I would say that for the publications, you kind of want to have something that you can work with quite quickly. For the policymakers, for the policymaking, you need to have details. And given the recent advancement in computation, we can do a lot now in terms of coding these models. And in terms of kind of the development of this literature, the main focus now is kind of getting out of more the macro stuff, but looking at more micro and distributional implications. Yeah.
Thank you, George, and all the best with your career over the next 16 years. And beyond, and beyond. And our next speaker is Daniela Andrei from School of Management and Marketing at Curtin University. Daniela has also been with the CEPAR second generation for the whole period, and she's going to present on designing more age-inclusive work and workplaces, ongoing and future research directions. Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you, Marian, and thanks again to everyone for inviting me to give you a little bit of a glimpse of where I am in my research journey, which started with CEPAR 7 years ago. I did officially leave CEPAR 2 years ago, although it doesn't feel like I left. I'm really excited to show you a little bit of where the research started in CEPAR has taken me, and where I hope to take it a little bit further in the future. Before I do that, I actually do have to acknowledge and be grateful for the support that I got from CEPAR, not just by providing me with some job stability 5 years ago, which is hard to come by in our field, but also all the different types of support that we received in so many direct and indirect ways. Also to show my gratitude to Sharon, who gave me the job at the beginning of CEPAR Point 2. And through this job and the mentorship that she provided significantly influenced my professional development, my personal development, my academic development. And last but not least, although my name is there, I have to acknowledge that what I'm going to present is the result and the journey of a number of people, a great team that I was fortunate to work with and help build. And although they are not all named, I'm very grateful to them and excited to work with them in the future. My work, unsurprisingly, will continue to try to look at the main question that Stream 3 had over the course of our work, which is how can we build, or what type of work do we need and workplaces do we need to build to make sure that we don't only retain people for longer in work, but we do so in a way that keeps them engaged, healthy, and productive over the lifespan. And in doing so, my research focuses on two main types of factors or types of drivers that we think they might be really important. One has to do with the structures of organizations and of work that might feed into this question. And a lot of the research that we presented already for Stream 3 focuses on this element. But also we are finding another cluster of factors that emerge as really important, which are more rooted in the everyday interactions between people and the inter and intrapersonal processes that these interactions give rise to. So these are two of the main themes of my current and future research agenda, and I'll try to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what we have in this space and where we plan to go. So in terms of the organizational and work design factors, we did present quite a lot, and there is actually quite a lot of research also acknowledging the importance of work structures and work design for mature workers, but that doesn't mean that everything is known. Actually, there's quite a bit of room to develop in this space. And for example, here, a few ways in which we are trying to look at some of the research gaps that are there are through research that aims to bridge the gaps between work design literature and developmental self-regulatory strategies. We talked a lot about the way we change as we age throughout the lifespan, and we do know that we have gains and losses, but we do know that there are self-regulatory strategies that help people actually maintain health, motivation, performance, but we know less about how work design influences those. So in a large-scale collaboration, we've just finished collecting the fourth wave of data from a large-scale Australian sample, and we've already submitted a proposal to the special issue that Sharon and I and a team of collaborators are currently coordinating for work, aging, and retirement. We also want to look a little bit more at the complex interplay between work design and aging, and I'll come back to that. But we're also taking all the learnings that we had in Stream 3, especially in that area of individualization, which we also saw from the HR practices that not only is not well researched, is not well actioned in practice. And this forms an important part of our ongoing discussions within the European Leverage Working Group 1, which focuses on work and organizational practices for multi-age workforce. And there we look at how we can actually individualize HR practices, but also help mature workers themselves individualize these practices. I'll talk a little bit, I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse into that second area, because we collected quite a bit of data trying to look at work design and aging. And we quickly realized that having more data doesn't necessarily mean a better understanding of work design and aging, and how they not only interplay with each other, but also interplay with significant and important outcomes that are associated with successful aging at work. So we had a lot of data, but we felt that the kind of standard methodologies that were used in our field were not really useful in us driving that field of research further. So we were very lucky to come by the work of Dr. Eyal Karen, who's today with us too, although you wouldn't recognize him based on the only official photo that I was able to find of him on the World Wide Web. And our collaboration with him, which started this year, will actually allow us to really look into some of these very interesting questions around these complex relationships. And it's allowing us to do so because Eyal is developing together with us and for us a complex methodological and tailored methodological approach that actually I'll probably explain all wrong, so feel free to ask him questions about at the end. It's combining complex multivariate analysis with residual structural equation modeling and network analysis visualization to allow us to do two things. One is going really deep and detailed and nuanced in the interrelationships between age and work. But also to not get lost in those details, it allows us to also go back up and have a comprehensive view of these relationships. And I'll give you a little glimpse of that. So for example, it's very small, but you don't need to read anything. On the left-hand side, you have an idea of how age plays a role for two outcomes, burnout upwards and workability downwards. And just by the strength of those red column there, you can see that age plays a much stronger role for burnout than for workability, both directly, so directly influencing or being directly associated with burnout, but also by shaping the relationships between some of the work design factors that we have there and these outcomes. And this is very interesting because workability technically is a more age specific outcome, and burnout not so much. But what we're finding through this methodology is that burnout is actually much more sensitive to age effects, both directly and indirectly by interactions with work design characteristics. And then on the tornado graph on the right-hand side, we can see even more details in terms of how these effects vary by age. And we have the older population is more brown-orange and the younger population is more bluish. And you can see, for example, that although on average, the relationships between, or the associations between need supply fit, social worth, rural clarity at work, and so forth are stronger for older workers. Very young workers are also in that cluster. So it gives us a very nuanced and detailed view of this interplay. And combined with the network analysis visualization, then what Eyal was able to do with us is to separate a generic network, which is on the left, from an age-specific network, which is in the middle, where we can see that age actually strengthens quite a lot of the associations between the factors that we looked at and creates new factors, new relationships, versus a network that displays the relationships between these work design characteristics and outcomes, what's left after we've accounted for age. So we're really, really excited about this direction of of research, and we already are looking at extrapolating this methodology to other things where we don't look at these relationships by age, but we could look at them by gender, for example, or by other types of variables. In the second part, or the second theme, which focuses more on relational factors, 2 projects that I'm currently involved in were developed, again, through visits that were supported generously by CEPAR. And one looks at subtle discrimination experiences in everyday work, and the other looks at the social comparisons that all the workers involve or do naturally at work, and their links with engagement with work and colleagues. So I'll give you a taster of that very quick. Social comparisons is things that all of us do every day. I compared my presentation now with Sharon's, for example, but we also can compare our performance trajectories, like we can compare our career trajectories today. We do that every day. And the way we do it, it can be in a favorable way or a non-favorable way. So because I don't have time left, I'll just show you the results. And what we are finding is that when people compare themselves unfavorably to others, the motivation, generativity motivation can suffer, but only if we compare unfavorably with younger workers. And the meta-stereotype threat can be activated for older workers, but only when they compare unfavorably with similar others. And this has an impact for their engagement, as well as avoidance and withdrawal. So there's lots of things happening, which I'm happy to discuss more about, and please connect via LinkedIn and keep in touch or ask questions afterwards if you have any questions about these directions. Thank you so much.
And actually there's time for questions now. Does anyone have a question for Daniela? About her current work, past work, or future directions? Yes, do you want to move back one slide?
How backward?
No. Your future directions, I think. Katja's interested. No, go towards the second last slide.
Oh.
The one you had to skip because I pushed you through. Yes, that's the your next projects, is that right?
Well, most of the things that are presented today are ongoing projects, which will spill a lot in the future also.
Terrific. So any questions or thoughts there? Yes, up the back, is that? I can't quite see. Is it? Who's behind you? There, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. In the, I think, second slide, it mentioned the workforce factors that drive increased retention and so on and so forth. So far, based on your research, have you got any preliminary findings at all?
So we do look at several outcomes, not just the ones that I've presented here, but retention outcomes, for example, are not. If you're talking about this line of research, no?
My question is about what sort of measures or approach that will be helpful to retain older workers.
Based on the research you've done so far.
So, for example, if you look here, this gives us a glimpse of what's really, really important and what reduces burnout, for example, for all the workers. And you can see that having a need-supply fit, demands of ability, social worth, role clarity, social support, work methods autonomy, feedback from job, work scheduling autonomy, and decision-making autonomy is pretty much really, really important, especially for the workers. So if there are levers that we want to really push at work, these would be the levers that we would need to look at, because they reduce burnout, and we know that burnout is associated with exit from the workforce, mental health issues, and also injury, related to psychosocial risks. So just based on this, that's what we would do, but we have also other types of outcomes that we look at, and the picture might be a little bit different from other types of outcomes.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniela. And all the best with your next phase of your career. Thank you. And our wonderful speaker now, who fits in the very last slot, but we're eager. We've been waiting all day to hear from you, Larry. Larry Liu from the Crawford School of Public Policy at ANU. He's been working, I think, with Warwick for a long time, and you often get mentioned. So I'm sure you're going to impress us all in this last presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. And hello, everyone. Thanks for staying into the last presentation. And it's really challenging to present it in the last, because it's really hard to compete with all previous impressive presentations. And also it's hard to compete with the reception, which is coming after my presentation. So today I'm going to talk about population aging and national saving and external balance, or trade balance in the global context. This is something in addition to my work, my joint work with work we have done, we have already done, and this is already in progress. But there is a lot more to do in order to provide a comprehensive study on this topic. So let me start with a number of charts. This first chart presents the global elderly dependent ratio by region since World War II up to the end of this century. So everyone in this room knows the general trend of population aging, but I'm going to highlight 2 points. One is that population aging has accelerated since 2010s, roughly, I should point here, roughly here, accelerating out since the 2010s. The second point is that although the world shares a similar long-run trend, there is a significant heterogeneity across regions. This heterogeneity has strong implications. The second chart presents global national saving rates, also by region. And there I also have 2 messages here. The first one is that there is significant heterogeneity across regions. The second one is that advanced economies, including North America and Europe, have very stable national saving rates at around 20% of GDP over a long time. But Asia is very interesting. This line at the top represents, this line represents the region of East Asia and Southeast Asia. The saving rate of this region stand out at a very high level. Another region, this one is South Asia, is also interesting. Started at a very low level, but it increased persistently over time and still remain very high. The third chart presents global current account balances, or more simply, global trade balances. So the current account balances is, you can interchangeably think about this as trade balance, which is exports minus imports. The current account balance also captures the gap between national saving and investment, and also reflects international capital flows. And this chart contains 6 major economies, including Australia here. What we can read here, there are also 2 messages here. One is that some countries have persistent current account surplus or trade surplus for a long time. such as, I think this is Germany, this is China, and this is Japan. Some other countries have persistent current account deficit or trade deficit for a long time. For example, this is the bottom one. I think the bottom one is Australia, and the United States and the United Kingdom. This is the first message. So I think the second message is that this current account imbalances or trade imbalances have increased persistently over time. The fourth chart presents global interest rate represented by the US Treasury bonds rates. This is also after World War 19, starting from 1960. If we focus on the time period after 1980, you will see that this interest rate has declined persistently over the entire period. Interest rates, national saving, investment, trade balances are really important macro variables. So a general question here is that are these long-run patterns of these key macroeconomic variables related to long-term demographic change? The general answer is yes. Let me put these several variables into together and then link to population aging. Here is a general framework. Let's first consider a closed economy. So the interest rate, very important macro variable. The interest rate is the price of capital, which is determined by the supply of capital and the demand for capital, very basic economics. So the supply of capital is saving, and the demand for capital is investment. The intersection between saving and investment determines the equilibrium. Now let's introduce population aging into this diagram. Population aging has impacts on consumption and also on production. On the consumption side, population aging will change this saving curve because individuals' income have this life cycle patterns. On the production side, population aging can shift the investment curve because population aging reduces the size of labor force. So this is the move of this investment of this saving curve and investment curve will change the equilibrium interest rate and saving and investment. Let's open this economy to the world market. Let's consider small open economy, such as the Australian economy. This small open economy take the world interest rate has given, so represented by this horizontal line. So this will determine the equilibrium investment, equilibrium saving. The gap between this saving and investment determines trade balances or international capital flows. And I have built a four-stage life cycle models showing that a long list of factors that can contribute to how national saving, investment, and trade balances respond to population aging. For example, in some key variables, including fertility rates, mortality rates, and pension replacement rates, predicted growth rates, and also consumption preference parameters, and also production parameters, and also a bunch of other things. I also plan to extend this small open economy to two-country model. In such a general case, the global interest rate is determined endogenously. So I can look at asymmetric demographic shocks in asymmetric economies. And also I already done some work on this empirical part, take this theoretical insights into empirical data, and using different econometric techniques to estimate the impact of population aging on national saving rates and international capital flows based on historic cross-country data. The last block on my research genre is to build multiple countries of large-scale OLG models, so calibrated to macro and microdata, which is quite related to George's work, and then simulated this asymmetric demographic shocks in the future. And this allows me to look at a number of asymmetry in multiple dimensions, including economic structure, consumption behavior, pension system, and also productivity growth, also international capital flow frictions. Okay, to finish up, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the entire CEPAR team, and especially grateful for my supervisor, Professor Warren McKibben, and also CEPAR Director, Professor John Pigot, who initially brought me into this team. And also grateful for CEPAR mentors, including Alan over there, and also Hans Fair, who is in Germany. And also, of course, I've learned immensely from a lot of wonderful colleagues here. And my daughter, who is 8 years old, is currently learning a Chinese song, which is called Invisible Wings. And he plays so many times every day, so you can imagine the feeling about that. One part of this lyrics, one part of the lyrics is really encouraging, like this. I know I have a pair of invisible wings that can take me to fly over despair, fly with hope. Through my journey with CEPAR in the last 7 years, I think I have grown my own invisible wings, at least research-wise. So I'm really grateful for this journey. And once again, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Larry, and what a lovely way to end your presentation and your reflections on your time with CEPAR. Are there some questions for Larry? Any questions of economic interpretation or modelling questions, suggestions for future directions? Yes, Katja.
So your chat about interest rates stopped at a critical point, right? So the interest rates look different, like your time series of interest rates.
This is what?
No, time series. The time series of interest rates.
Time series, okay, time series of interest rate.
Yeah, so that stopped, right? And then after that, the interest rates have had a different trend, right? How does that fit with your story? Like interest rates have been up, right? Interest rates have gone up.
You mean after, which period are you looking at?
The recent years.
Oh, recent, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. This chart mainly look at it. This is just up to 2018. You're right. This interest rate has gone up in the last 30 years. But this chart mainly shows the long run pattern. The reason I focus on long run pattern is that demographic change, population aging, is a long term, low frequency movement. And of course, a lot of factors contributed to short term interest rate change or short term change in other variables, but my research, this part of research mainly focused on long-term movement.
So is your prediction, I think Katja's question is, what is the future with interest rates? Do they stay low-ish relative to the 80s, or do they?
I'm cautious to put a conclusion here because there is still something in progress. Particularly, this relies on this quantitative model.
Okay.
Thanks.
Perhaps you can't answer that. I think and for most the short-term pain that hits anyway. So
the the general trend will be, so because from my first chart of the population aging, this population aging will be still aging very rapidly in the next several decades. This will still keep pushing this interest rate. Of course, but the interest rate will be determined by a number of other factors. For example, productivity growth, which if there is a productivity growth, this will push up the interest rate. So there are a number of factors that can contribute to interest rate change in the future.
Thank you, Larry. I think we need another seminar first thing in the morning.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. But thank you very much, Larry, for your very thorough presentation. Thank you. So that's the end of session 3 and the end of our showcase day. I think you can all agree that the next generation of research is in very good hands, very well mentored, trained, and intelligent hands. So congratulations to all of you who have come through and will, we hope, win many grants, have wonderful publications, and set up another Centre of Excellence in time. But now it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to someone who we all know, our most esteemed, respected, patient, wise Director of CEPAR, our elder. Thank you. Thanks, John.
So thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for participating and joining in the day, and indeed joining in what CEPAR has come to represent over the past 14 years. I think anyone who's spent all day here will see that there are many facets, and that I have felt very honoured to have such wonderful chief investigators and such committed senior researchers and such hard-working PhD students and postdocs involved in the centre over that period. And I think we have made a difference in terms of the way population ageing is perceived as an issue and is characterised in an issue through multidisciplinary approaches. And I think that's global. I think it's sort of seen a little bit differently now. And I think that's one of the achievements of the last 14 years. But the centre it's wonderful and completely necessary that the research is excellent, but it's already been alluded to today that you need also other pieces to make the centre complete. And one of those is translation and engagement. And I think Mark de Cure has to take credit for really being the architect of our engagement model. And as Frederick said this morning, that model actually is pretty state-of-the-art, and I would like to see that taken further, not just within the School of Business, but more generally in the way that the social sciences communicate to policymakers and to business the outcomes of their research. But as well, there's another piece of CEPAR, which is about the professional staff and their attitudes and the way they make everyone feel a part of the community. So the centre, to be a successful centre, I think, has to coalesce in a community. So the person that I would like to credit with that is Anne Gordon. Everyone who talks to Anne feels immediately welcome, and they feel part of that community. And her influence throughout CEPAR's existence, I think, has been immense. Apart from anything else, she was what I would describe as the senior author on both the successful grant applications. She was just amazing. And so I had actually 2 presentations, one for Mark and one for Anne, but Mark had to go home unwell. So we just have one presentation, and Anne is right at the back, and now she's got to walk all the way up to the front to receive a presentation. She didn't know about this. There you are. Thank you so much for all your commitment, all the late nights, and everything that you've done for CEPAR.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's just been such a lovely day today, seeing everybody from past and present just around, and it's just been really nice to see I don't know, the fruits of all the labour that John just alluded to, and to see the connections that people have made, that, you know, people who didn't know each other 14 years ago from various disciplines and from various nodes around the country, all chatting amiably together. And I hope that those relationships will last forever, really. So thank you. I'm really thrilled. And thank you also to John, who's just been amazing and has given me a lot of opportunity and has created this entire community that's here today. So thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end, on time. It's an amazingly timely day for a busy day. Everyone has been fantastic. And thank you, and so long. There is a reception up in level 11 of the Matthews building, and people will take you there if you wish to join us. Thank you very much. I'm back because Hazel asked me to publicise that there will be a smaller part of CEPAR that continues, right? Mainly within the business school, and part of that will be the colloquium in November, the IPRA conference, I think, at the end of the year. So there will be some events that go on, so people need to stay connected through the website.